Howdy y'all, you got the Bulldog on the channel. I was planning on having a start to finish video of something, but this came in and I thought this is a good teaching moment. Now I'm still waiting on the parts for Christine right there. But this here, it's a good example of the issues that are going to arise between the customer and the shop. This 2000 S10 got the old 2.2 in it. It's a fairly simple engine. It came in and it because they're afraid to drive it. It does it all the time. They didn't know if it was going to even run, and it runs fine. Kinda. I mean, it runs. Every once in a while it just doesn't feel quite right. There's really no codes in the computer other than evap codes. There is one code for the AIR system, which is the smog pump, basically. I can't even explain that one. But here's our issue. The symptom that this truck is having can be caused by a number of different things. The smog pump, possibly if it's got a purge valve sticking open and dumping, but the conditions that they say that it does it in, that doesn't really track. And that's another issue. Getting specific with your symptoms when you're describing it to the mechanic. They're trying to ask these questions not because they want to be a dick or they want to show you that you don't know what you're talking about, and they do. They need to narrow it down. Otherwise, what you're going to get is you're going to get could not duplicate concern over and over and over again. And you can't understand why in the world they can't make it happen when it happens to you all the time. Well, you have to tell them under what conditions it happens. This here, they start it up, they drive it a little bit, shut it off, and then when they get back in it, it doesn't want to run, or it doesn't want to start. Okay, how long did they drive it before they shut it off? How long did it set after they shut it off? Was it parked in a garage, or was it parked outside to begin with? All these different factors will factor into what we're looking for. Whether it's a fuel issue, they were convinced it's a fuel issue. Fuel pump relay switch is what they kept saying over and over again. There is no fuel pump relay switch. There's a fuel pump relay, and there's the ignition switch. It shows somebody that has done some research but doesn't know really what they're talking about. Well, here's the thing. They ask people, and they say some words, and it comes back, and it makes our job a little bit more difficult. Well, we checked the fuel. We checked the fuel pressure. The fuel pressure's fine. It never faltered. Of course, it didn't do it as badly as what they say it does. So we really can't say that for sure, but we don't see a problem with it. They said that when we did a fuel pump last year, we should have put a fuel filter on it at that time. Yeah, that's normal, but they were already complaining about the price last time. They were on the fence whether or not they were going to fix it last time. Well, that was an option because we're not replacing the fuel pump because of a fuel pump failure. We were replacing the fuel pump because the fuel pump module was cracked and leaking. So it wasn't a fuel restriction that made the pump go bad. It wasn't fuel contamination that made the pump go bad. It was cracked plastic. So we gave them the option of not replacing a fuel filter. And they took it. Well, now they're coming back and saying we should have done it at that time. That's what leads me into what I'm going to talk about right now. This repair, 95% sure is going to fix their issue. It needs spark plugs. The gap's supposed to be at 40, it's at 55 to 60. And as you can see, there's oil all over the plug wires, and that's from a leaking valve cover. It's all over the side of the engine down there. In order to do that, you have to pull this air box. We're going to pull the throttle body and clean it out because it's never been cleaned. Those wires are stock. They're 25 years old. They've got 250,000 miles on them. How many times does this thing have plugs? I don't know. They're obviously not stock because they would be over 100,000 if they were stock. It needs plugs. It needs wires. It needs a valve cover gasket. It needs the throttle body cleaned. It needs the injectors flushed and cleaned. Where do you stop? That's the thing that I'm going to talk about right here. Now, can we just put plugs and wires on it? Yes, we can. And then the leaking valve cover is going to ruin the new wires. And then we get a comeback. Well, why didn't you do that at that time? Because you said not to, because you were complaining about the price. Why didn't you do this at that time? Because you said not to, because you said you didn't have the money. I made this mistake when I was a new business owner. Somebody came in with a spun bearing, and I dropped it down. I looked at it. The crank did not look torn up. Well, this is, what do we do? Well, it needs the engine rebuilt. It needs the engine pulled, dismantled, everything gone through, every bearing put in it, and the crank turned. Oh, that's going to be all kinds of money. What's an option? Well, the cheaper option would be to drop the crank and have it turned and put new bearings in the low end. Oh, what's another option? And here's my big mistake. I said, well, I could just put bearings in it and see how it goes. That was the option that they went for. I said, understand, this is not a repair. This is a Band-Aid. This is a patch. Oh, yeah, I get it. Well, fast forward 3-4 months, and I get pulled aside by a local mechanic. Hey, did you work on so-and-so's truck? Yeah, I put bearings in it. That's all you did? I said, yeah. It had a spun bearing. He didn't want to pop for a rebuild or anything, so I just put bearings in it. Told him it wasn't going to last. Well, he told me that you had just rebuilt the motor, and I could tell right then that no one has rebuilt this motor. So that was the word that got out immediately. My name was mud around a few people because I was a cheat, I was a crook, because I rebuilt that motor and I didn't actually rebuild that motor. No. I told them point blank that this was an option, that this was not a rebuild, but it didn't matter. On this truck here, there's no option. There's no have a heart, do a little bit, try to work with people or anything. We're doing all of it or none of it. Some mechanics are pretty heartless. Me, I have become that way in a lot of respects, because in this situation, I was being blamed for not going all the way last time and saying that was the cause of this problem here. No, it was not the cause of this problem here. I don't know exactly what the cause of it, but I know what it's not. Well, you should have gone ahead and done that. That has happened to us many, many, many times. Whenever somebody cannot pay for something and we give them the option of not doing that, it comes back on the back end with us getting blamed for what they couldn't pay for before. Well, you should have gone ahead and done it. It's bumping the responsibility to people. Since we know better, we shouldn't have allowed them to do that. You as a customer have a choice, but you as a customer also have a responsibility to accept the consequences of that choice. Especially if we are absolutely giving you all the information to show that this is a huge risk. If we're saying it's a risk, believe it. Okay, it's been a couple of days. I've already shot and edited the video on this thing, but you want to revisit it. I'm cleaning the injectors on it at the moment. This truck doesn't exist, according to, literally everyone. It's a one-line system. Well, they do sell parts for it. Here's the fuel filter. I just gassed myself. Here's the fuel filter. Only, you see there's 3 lines on it. It's not a fuel filter. This was cheap. It was the price of a fuel filter. So we thought, oh, fuel filter. We got a cheaper one. The next up is how many? 7, 8 times the cost. This is the price of a filter, but that is not a filter. That is a fuel pressure regulator, and this is defective. Instead of running the required, 50 or 60 pounds, it was running 90. It flooded it out. So whenever you have an issue with a shop where you're saying, oh my gosh, this is so much more money, I can get the same thing at the parts store. Maybe you can. Maybe you can. Okay, it's been a couple of days. I kind of got cut off mid-rant there. But the customer got the vehicle back. They didn't have to pay anything extra as far as re-diagnosing and R&Ring that part again. They got charged for the price of the part that we had to buy. They didn't have to deal with returning that defective part. We'll take care of that. That is sometimes a difference between this part that you can get at your local parts store that's supposed to cost 20 bucks and getting one that costs 200. Sometimes these are the problems with it. We fired that thing up and everything was good. We thought it ran okay. You got going down the road and then it just flooded itself out. He didn't think he was going to make it back on a test drive. That's why we test drive also. And of course we put the test equipment back on it and find out that the fuel pressure was running close to 100 pounds. And we got a Wix part for it and put it on there. Everything was fine. Drove it twice more. Customers kind of, I need my vehicle back. I need my vehicle back. I need my vehicle back. Why are you having to test drive it so much? This is why. We don't want you to give you back a problem. We already had a failure. We didn't give it back to the customer yet. First test drive we had this issue. And that's the problem with the truck when it came in and it was flooding out. It was flooding out because the plugs were worn down to nubs, 2 of them. The other 2 looked fine. That's what I was saying earlier. Double check your plugs because one of them will look fine. You get the other side of the coil and it'll be off to the nub or below. This one was below the surface of the porcelain on one of them. The electrode was completely gone. That's what platinum does. Once that platinum tip is gone, it'll just burn it through. We're running a lot more voltage than we used to back 40, 50 years ago. So, like I say, the customer picked it up. They were happy with it. Not happy with the bill, which was why we didn't change that fuel filter last year when we put the fuel pump in it. The fuel pump was cracked. We didn't do it because of a pump failure. So that was the option. They took the option of not putting a filter on it. Now they changed their mind, and well, now they wanted a filter back then. Well, that's not how things work. So, but anyway, it worked out in the end. Like, comment, subscribe, hit your little bell notification, share it all around. We'll talk to you later.